Stephen Cotter, international, long-time kettlebell guru. Been traveling the world for, I don't know how many years. I've seen your name. I've seen
Long
you
time.
just around. The Latin America, I've just seen you around forever. Thank you so much for coming up. Martial artist, long-time martial artist as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Great to be here.
Seen you doing kettlebells with Bjj Revolution and Salo.
Right.
Who's I was telling you, my favorite kind of, he's like the GOAT for me, the greatest of all time for jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it's amazing to train with him. He's a brilliant tactician. Yeah, unbelievable.
Where are you from? Are you from California?
I've been out since 82.
82.
So I moved out when I was 12 years old. I was born in New York. Yeah, and then I lived there till I was 9, and then I lived in Philadelphia for 3 years, and then finally came out to California.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Philly. So, okay. And you got involved with kettlebells later once you got to California?
Yeah, so kettlebells, nobody knew about them back then. Kettlebells kind of came to the West in 2001. So I got involved in those early days. My first kettlebell I touched in 2001.
When you were still in Philly?
No, back here.
Back here,
I came out of California to 82.
82.
When I was 12, yeah. So I didn't get into kettlebells till it was just starting in U.S. 2001. I was 31, almost 32 at that point. Okay. Yeah.
So going back to, you moved from from East Coast to L.A. What brought you to L.A.?
Yeah,
LA, California.
Yeah, San Diego. Yeah, so actually my oldest two brothers, I was living, so the story is I was living in Philadelphia with because I'm the youngest of 5 kids. My older brothers are much older, so it was myself and my sister living with my mom. And she ended up being unemployed. She lost her job, so we ended up moving in with a friend of hers in inner city Philly. Wow. In an area called Overbrook, which is I don't know about now, but at that time it was very rough. We were I was going to be the only white kid in an all African American school, and my older brother, in a rough part of town. And my older brother, John, was living out here, and my older brother, Mike. And John was saying, man, I'm really concerned about Steve. He's going to get in some problems out there. I was a small kid and everything too. And so he convinced my mom, let us bring him out to California. We'll supervise him, out here. And she agreed. So, she sent me out to California and started living with them, got involved. They got me involved.
Who was that here?
So my oldest two brothers were living out in San Diego.
Gotcha.
At that time. And they're all spread out, all over now through different states around the country. Yeah, and I ended up staying in San Diego.
So in the hood in Philly.
Yeah.
You were in high school?
No, I was.
After high school.
I was 12 years old, so I was just gonna be going into 7th grade, and I was kind of living there in the summer before my.
Gotcha.
So it would have been probably junior high, but back there it was junior, senior is one school.
Yeah.
7th through 12th.
Okay, cool. So you're really California then, huh?
Yeah, I'm a California guy. I'm a New Yorker. Born in New York,
East Coast.
Live in California. It's the best of both worlds.
And did you play sports?
Yeah, as a kid, I was a baseball guy.
Okay.
And then when I came out here, I stopped playing sports. I was doing Chinese martial arts as my full-time passion, and that became my first career, teaching martial arts as well.
What brought you to the martial arts? What attracted you?
So it was really my oldest two brothers were training, and so I want you to come out to California, learn kung fu. And back then I was Bruce Lee, and so I didn't really know anything about it, but it was just my brothers, and they got me involved, and there was no kids classes, so I was the youngest guy and training with adults, and just got immersed into the traditional Chinese martial arts, the culture and the meditation and the qigong and the Chinese medicine as well as the martial art, and that really was my foundation for physical culture, which later led me to go into fitness and kettlebells and everything that came out of it. But I've always the way that I teach the kettlebell, the way I approach it, I always approach it from the point of view of a martial artist.
Perspective of a martial artist.
Mind, body, and breath. It's holistic movement. It's integrated movement. Never really was looking at it as a bodybuilder or anything like that.
That's the sense I get when I watch you, and that's why I wanted to talk to you and reach out to you in the first place, because that's the sense that I got. It's interesting you say that.
Yeah, thank you.
That's what it written.
And it's principle based.
That's why I look at TACFIT as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. I feel like it's a martial art, but just with yourself, right? And
right.
That's how. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And these are these tools are
except for yourself.
It's kind of these handheld tools that have become popular in the last decade. Really kettlebells and club bells probably being the foremost that has started what nowadays people are calling unconventional.
Right.
But these are handheld tools. They're extensions of a hand, and we go back, to our origins.
Right.
These are weapons.
Right.
And so it only goes as far as our ability to use our body.
Right.
There's no magic.
It seems
tool.
like even fitness, right? You say the term fitness, but it was for fighting, right? For defending your city, your community, your country.
Absolutely.
Right. It was for for that.
In origins, we came from tribes. All of us descend from
tribe.
Just a few tribes, really. And it's like if you is either hunting and gathering, or it's defending against maybe more aggressive tribes. And if you were better conditioned, if you could run faster, jump higher, and were stronger, you had a better chance of survival and continuing the family line or the tribal line.
That's it.
And then now we have fitness, where we're living in these cities and existing in cubicles, where everyone's in at a desk on their smartphone in a car, and they're not moving their bodies. So the way we live is so very different, but our physiology is the same as our ancestors from 100,000 years ago in the early evolution of man.
Yeah. And
so now we need to program fitness, whereas our great grandparents weren't working out, they were working with their bodies.
Right.
It's not like, I'm in the farm for 16 hours, now I'm going to go get my workout. No, you're going to sleep and do it again tomorrow.
Right.
And now it's like we have to exercise, otherwise our bodies just stop functioning from the way our cities have grown and progressed.
Right. Gotten soft, right? So moved out here, Chinese martial arts, kung fu, and then how did you have a kinesiology degree, right? Like a degree in that.
Yep.
How did that evolve? What made you want to go into that?
Yeah. So what happened was I was my first sifu, in the Chinese is the sifu. And I'm very grateful to him. He introduced me to the arts, and he was a pretty young guy. He was in his kind of early to mid 20s, about the same age as my older brothers. And I was like a 12-year-old kid, very impressionable. He became sort of a father figure to me at that time, and my, kung fu school was sort of like my surrogate family.
Yeah.
I didn't have any parental supervision, and and so I kind of started on that.
Because your brothers were.
Well, they were like young 20s.
Nice.
They're getting high, they're working, they're
And your mom sent you out
yeah,
there.
and she eventually came out to California, about a year after, but at that point, I was very independent. I would say I was raised by wolves.
Yeah, I mean,
and didn't have that.
7th grade, 12 years old.
Yeah.
To be sent over to live with your older brothers.
Yeah, flying across the country. I landed at LAX. I saw palm trees for the first time in my life, and it's a totally different world. And so I kind of I got into teaching when I was like 15. I started teaching kids at the city rec center where I was living outside of San Diego. And then as I started, 16, 17, I started kind of running some classes. And then when I was, I think, 18, 19, my sifu got a serious lower back injury where he couldn't really do anything for a while. So I was just the person that was able, first I was young and I was training 6 days a week. And I had, a certain talent and a work ethic and just the schedule and freedom where he's like, I need you to cover classes for me. So I kind of adapted into that role where now I was running the school, myself and some of the older, black belts. And I got really good at, selling, and people would come in, and I could move
Sign them
and
up.
you know, so we built the school up to where at one time we had about 300 people, you know, for just a single school.
Were your brothers still training?
Yeah, they were still training as well, and I passed them up in the sense, you know, as far as the skill. Just I started younger, and you know, I had the flexibility.
And you were focused. You weren't doing what they were doing.
Right. It wasn't a part-time thing for me. It was a full-time thing, you know, and. So at that point, my late teens, I figured, you know, I'm going to be doing this the rest of my life. This is my career. And I envisioned that, yeah, I would be teaching Kung Fu forever. And so then as I kind of grew into a young man, I did, in my mid-20s, I did the full contact. I won 2 U.S. titles of a sport called Quoshu, which is like full contact Kung Fu. We fight on a lei tai. It's like a boxing ring with no ropes. You remember that?
Quoshu?
Quoshu. If you remember that movie Bloodsport,
yeah,
it was based on the same sport.
Okay.
They also call it Sanshao, which is
Sanshao, yeah.
Sanshao is like
Li,
the Chinese call it. Kung Li was the most accomplished fighter of Sanshao. That, you know, he went into, I think, UFC at one point. He fought Shamrock. So Quoshu is what they call it in Taiwan, and my Kung Fu lineage came out of the Taiwan. Yeah, it's basically the same sport, different names, and now they even call it Sanda. Which is just another name, another name for the same thing. So it's that Chinese kickboxing, and you know, so basically what happened in my kind of mid to late 20s, my Sifu and I at that time, we had a kind of a differences of opinion, and I kind of got excommunicated from the martial art family, which is an old tale in the martial arts. These things happen, you know, and it was. So then I realized, well, I'm not going to be doing this the rest of my life. So now what? And I didn't have any idea what I was doing. And at this point, my first child had not been born. She was born a year later. But I was trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And so I figured, well, let me see what the college offers, the local college down in San Diego State. And I saw that they had a kinesiology program, and that was really appealing to me because I was always into training. I mean, I didn't really love the fighting. I did the fighting, but what I loved was because now I'm not. Now I'm a, you know, I realize I came to term with my shadow side and the beast side, but at that time I always saw myself as like, oh, I'm a nice guy. I don't want to hurt people and this type of thing, right? So I was really interested in the physical conditioning. That and at that, in those years, I was literally training 8 to 10 hours a day. I was teaching 4 or 5 classes throughout the day, private lessons. I was doing the full contact at night. I was going to the gym after that. I was running up and down the mountain, you know, up and down twice on my lunch break. So that was the, you know, doing, you know, probably 1,000 push-ups a day, a couple hundred one-legged squats a day, and just my conditioning was very high level, and that's what I love to do. And so I said, oh, well, let me get some academic background. That, you know, I have all this experience, but let me start studying the science. So I went, and that's what led me to go into study kinesiology. Got my degree in 2001. I was 31 years old. And then at that time, it was, you know, kettlebells were just coming on the scene. And actually the kettlebells, the reason I was an early adapter is they were promoted in this catalog called Vitalics, which was a martial art catalog. So I had been on their mailing list for years. I would buy, like, you know, VHS tapes on Qigong and Tai Chi and these types of things. And then I started seeing Pavel. Yeah. He's the originator, him and his business partner, John Duquesne. So Dragon Door was the company. Dragon Door, yeah. Right. And they had this catalog called Vitalics. It was before hardstyle even existed. You know, it was just like
I love hearing these stories.
Yeah, because like origins.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I saw these advertisements. Like in 2001, I started seeing, first I saw, probably 2000, I saw Pavel's stretching. I think it was called Relaxin' to Stretch. I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then I started seeing the kettlebell. And this time I had been going to the gym. It was like 24-hour fitness. Now, there was no CrossFit at that time, you know, and even MMA was brand new at that time, you know. MMA, like, started, I think, 93 was the first UFC, you know. So, but
then it was underground for a lot of years in the 90s.
Right, like in the Vale Tudo and before it came to the U.S., right? And, you know, so training has evolved so much in those 20 years since then, what's available now compared to then, you know. And so I saw these kettlebells, and I remember when I was going to 24-hour fitness, I never really liked it because like it didn't relate to the martial arts. It's like, yeah, you're building your biceps, but you're isolating muscles, and it's like a social club. People are like standing in the mirror, and I was really focused as a martial arts. Like I was focused on the internal, and so it never really, that gym scene never really resonated with me. And I was looking.
You always had that martial art mindset.
Yeah, I was looking for something. I wanted to learn Olympic lifting, but the nearest Olympic coach was a guy, Mike Bergner, who is a U.S. Olympic coach. His son was an national champion at one point, but he was up in Bonsall, which was like an hour and a half north, and it wasn't practical for me to drive up there for Olympic lifting. So, and again, there was no CrossFit, so you couldn't just go to 24-hour fitness and learn Olympic lifting. And so I saw the kettlebell, and I saw how it kind of related, that explosive type of full body movement, and I wanted to learn it, but at that time I hesitated because there was only one company. They were very expensive. It was like $150 for like a one kettlebell, and I didn't have the money, and I couldn't justify paying that. So I was still teaching, like on the weekends, I was teaching Kung Fu at a local park down the road from where I was living, and I brought this catalog and showed my students, and then 2 weeks later he shows up at the park and he's got kettlebells with him, and so I picked it up for the first time, and I just did like a swing and, just what I thought it would be. And I felt immediately from the ground, like that connection, that root coming from the stance and just the power expressing. And right away I was like, oh man, this is amazing. And so then I ordered some, and he actually, and I don't mind saying this because I think my statute of limitations has run out, but he burned me. He pirated a copy of the VHS, of Pavel. It was called the Russian Kettlebell Challenge. So I was like in my living room following these exercises on the VHS tape. And I learned it really well, at that time, because it was pretty basic movements. Yeah. I had at this point, more than almost 20 years of Kung Fu training behind me. Yeah. And then so that's kind of how I got a start. I trained myself for about a year.
You can't take away. He's like the godfather of
I mean, he's
kettlebell
in the history. He's a prominent guy, and in fact, you and I are probably here together, with this as a result of
I mean, I did the strong first. I did my snatch test just out of respect, to honor, honor that.
Yeah, and he's a brilliant guy, very, very smart guy. But and so kettlebells has evolved a lot since then. Back then it was just one source of information. Right. The Russian champions were not even involved yet. And it took some years later. So I adapted to that program. I went in 2003. I went to Pavel's course. This was before Strong First even existed. It was it was just.
What was the partner's name?
RKC. So John Duquesne was the owner of, still is, of Dragon Door, and he was like a marketing genius, really. And he kind of helped to create the legend of Pavel, and the persona of it. And at that time they were only doing courses in St. Paul, Minnesota. So if you wanted to learn kettlebells, didn't matter.
St. Paul, Minnesota.
Yeah, in the middle of like, in the middle of nowhere, in like this field at a rec center, and you get like 50, 60 people from all over. And so I was in one of those early groups. The first year was, you would know a guy named Steve Maxwell, who's a jiu-jitsu black belt. And Steve Maxwell was that first graduating class, and then I came a year later. And so by the time I was like looking on the Dragon Door forum back then, because back then it was even, I think, before Facebook existed. YouTube was pretty brand new. It
was the era of the forums.
Yeah, and like the big kind of influential guys that were the first guys that were figured out how to make money and do business with fitness on the internet. It was a guy, probably the big guy at that time was a guy named Matt Fury.
Right,
and Matt Fury had combat conditioning, which is a huge seller.
His Hindu push-ups.
Yep, and then Pavel was one of the early guys, and Scott Sonnen was one of the early guys that kind of was ahead of before the trend, and even before CrossFit.
Right.
And so I kind of was trailing behind that, and I was looking at what Pavel was doing. I was going to Dragon Door Forum, and something just called to me and said, I got to meet this guy Pavel. And I didn't have a business plan in mind, but it was just something that was calling to me, like, this is what I should be doing. So I went to his RKC course in 2003. And then I met Pavel, and right away he's like, "Oh, Steve, comrade, you're very strong and you know how to teach." And he's like, "I'd like you to come back in the next, in 2 months for our next course and be one of my assistants." So I came back the next, and then at that point he's like, "I would like you to be one of my senior instructors." And so then for about 3 years I was working with Dragon Door and Pavel, and and that time we had like 3 courses a year out there in Minnesota, and I was one of the seniors that were working with the recruits at that point. And just went from there. Then I evolved, and I ended up starting my own organization in 2008, which is the IKFF, which is International Kettlebell and Fitness Federation. And then
IKFF.
Yeah, and since that time I was really the first guy. So and it's not to be arrogant. It's just full transparency and truth. Is if we look at the history of the kettlebell and where it originated, I'm blessed to also have a place in that history because I was really the first guy that started taking it around the world,
internationally.
Yeah,
because that's where I've seen you too. Since I was so involved with TACFIT, I would see your name pop up,
right,
in Costa Rica and Mexico, and other places in Asia even.
Yeah, and it's we're all connected, and a lot of the people that are going to be attracted to TACFIT are also attracted to kettlebell because it's that unconventional kind of progressive trainer that's looking for what's next, what's good, and they're not satisfied with the bodybuilding and stuff like that. They want to do functional type of movements. So a lot of the same people are sort of working with me and working with TACFIT, and great people. So that's kind of the path that I took, and never actually had a real job in the sense I've always done, associated my profession with my passion, and been able to, create a life just based on what I enjoy doing, what I would be doing anyway, even if there was no money involved. And, that's something I really believe in because, being happy and feeling good and helping people is really a blessing to be able to do that.
Did you ever have moments where you're like, man, maybe I should get a 9-to-5?
I did. There was a period of time, and I kind of had a rebirth. And actually, I came back to the martial arts a couple years ago, which we can get into that, and in the jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which I love. But there was a period of time where, because when I started IKFF in 2008, my very first course was in January 2008 in Hong Kong. So my first first certification course was actually in Hong Kong. And that first year, 2008, 2009, 2010, right out of the gate, I had a lot of people coming, classes of 30, 40 people, because I had already starting to become pretty well known at that point. First through Dragon Door, and Pavel had featured me in some of his books, and Naked Warrior, and I had become known as like the guy that could jump up and down on a table on one leg.
Are those books still out there?
I think
Naked Warrior.
The Naked Warrior. It was a book he did on just body weight, how to progress, and it was the one arm push up and the one-legged
I'm gonna look that up.
Pistol squat.
Okay, cool.
So he had me featured. That time I was squatting, double 32 kilos with one leg, so like 64 kilos, 140 pounds, and so he featured me in the book for the pistol squat, and so my name was getting out there through. I didn't know anything about marketing, but Pavel's a great marketer, and my name started getting out there as a result of my work with Dragon Door initially. Obviously, I had an accomplishment in martial arts, which even gave me the possibility to get into that and to excel at it. And then I started creating DVDs, like in 2004. So in 2005, I got connected to a company, which at that time they were kind of the biggest MMA video company. It was called World Martial Arts.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, so they came a little bit after Budo. Like Budo Video is one of the first, but World Martial Arts kind of
before that, yeah.
Yeah, it might have been before. It was in that same era, but they actually were bringing on all the best guys in.
What year was that?
My first project with them was 2005, but prior to that, he had already done. He had done a Bjj Revolution with Saulo Ribeiro. He had brought in.
That's it. Yeah,
He did
and then
Kenny Money.
they were. I think they did even.
Oleg Taratov even did like a Sambo video. He had
they were involved in the jiu-jitsu. I remember that. Yeah, I remember seeing the name.
Because back then, like the Brazilians hadn't even come yet.
Right.
So people were literally learning jiu-jitsu off of videos, and you know UFC was new, and people were like, "Oh, I want to learn jiu-jitsu. I need to learn jiu-jitsu." But there was only probably a handful of black belts in America at that time, and then the Brazilian wave came in probably like. Started in the late 90s, but you know now it's like Southern California have every fight team from Brazil has probably their headquarters out here now, right?
Yeah, right.
But, you know, back then you didn't have that access, and
it's like the mecca now of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah,
SoCal.
Yeah. And so anyway, the World Martial Arts, they had a thing on their website that said Kettlebell Training, and it was all like judo, jiu-jitsu. They even had Cairo Parisian did like a no-gi judo DVD. It had Mario Sperry. He did a documentary called The Way of the Zen with Mario Sperry, and a bunch of really great grapplers. And Marcelo Garcia did a series with them. More recently, Ryan Hall did the project with them. So you had these guys, and on their website, it was Kettlebell Training. So one of my Kung Fu students, he had moved up north, and he was starting to do, I think, judo. So he emailed me and said, hey, because he was looking for some judo videos and found this World Martial Arts. And he's like, hey, they have a kettlebell thing on their website. Maybe you should check it out. At this point, I had my first kettlebell DVD, which I created on my own, which was called Full Contact Kettlebells, where I was combining kettlebells with like martial art concepts and stances. And just set up like a 2-page website, a home page, and a store. And I was taking orders. And so I saw that website, and I clicked on the contact, and I clicked on the kettlebell train. There was nothing there. It just said we're bringing the best information on kettlebell, and there was nothing. So I emailed the guy and I said, hi, I saw your website that you're doing something with kettlebells. I'm Steve Cotter. I'm one of the main kettlebell guys in the U.S. And I gave him some video clips from my DVD. And so the next morning I wake up, there's an email from him. He's like, call me. So I call the guy's name's Paul Veely. He was out in New York at that time. And he picks up the phone, typical New Yorker. He's like, you're one strong motherfucker, like that. And so we talked for about an hour and a half, and we decide, hey, let's do a project. So we started talking over a couple of weeks, and then eventually at 2005, I flew out there to New York, and we created, which at that time and even still is the largest ever project on kettlebell training. It's called the Encyclopedia of Kettlebell Lifting. And it was kind of revolutionary because prior to that, all the DVDs were like maybe 20, 30 minutes, and maybe there'd be 5 or 8 or 10 exercises, and they'd sell it for like $50. And we came out with this project, Encyclopedia of Kettlebells, that was like 9 hours. It was on 6 DVDs. It was almost 200 exercises, and we charged $99.99. And I was still know nothing about marketing, but Paul Veely was, very smart guy with internet marketing. He was putting out YouTube clips everywhere. And so that's what started giving me the international audience. And I started getting emails, oh, I got your DVD, I love it. I'm out here in Barcelona. I'd love to, get you out here to do a seminar. And that's kind of what launched me on that path that really has never ended, other than the COVID has changed it. Now I'm teaching on Zoom, whereas, up until February this year, I was touring around the planet, and, and it's just all word of mouth. It was like my first one was in Iceland, and then I did one, that was like in January 2007. And then I went to UK, or I went to Singapore, and a couple other countries. I went to UK. There was a guy at UK from Barcelona. He's like, hey, I want to bring you to Barcelona. And then I did this kind of boot camp seminar out in Connecticut. There was a guy from Singapore. He's like, hey, I want to get you out to Singapore. And it was just like that. It was personal contact, and people liked what I was doing. They're like inviting me. And then I go to Singapore. He's like, oh, and I got a friend in Hong Kong, and, I'm going to introduce you. So I email that guy. He's like, come to Hong Kong. And then there's he's got a contact in Thailand. I email her. She's like, oh, come out to Bangkok. And it just kind of went like that. And I was literally just flying all over the place. And then it took me, but anyway.
You told me 60 countries?
Yeah, 60 countries since 2007. Well, 2006 was my first international. I was still with Dragon Door at that time. We went to Copenhagen, which was Dragon Door's first international. But then from there, in 2007, I started doing seminars. And then finally in 2008, I created the certification program. And yeah, so pretty much every continent except for Antarctica, Africa multiple times, all throughout Asia, all throughout Europe, South America, North America, and Australia a few times, New Zealand. Yeah, so it was, and I loved it. But there was a period, like you said, where I kind of started wondering, man, I wouldn't mind having a little stability. I wouldn't mind having a little bit of routine, because it's like living out of a suitcase and, trying to make a relationship work and a marriage work. And, it was very difficult with
I bet.
And so there were times where I'd be sitting in some foreign country, like, where am I? Where am I? What am I doing? And it's like, man, I would just love to wake up in my own bed, and for a few years, and then also kind of the economy, kind of went down, and then sales weren't what they were, right. and then but then I got a resurgence again in the last few years, and just got re-inspired, and I took a different approach to it and realized that it's really a blessing to be able to provide a service, and it's a blessing to be able to do something where I'm offering value, and it's not just a job where I'm trying to collect a check, but rather I'm getting value by giving value. And what really inspired me was individuals that would come to me and, like, I took a course from you 5 years ago, and that changed my life, or or I see a guy that trained with me a long time ago, and now he's doing exceptional, and he's teaching people, and it's like, I was instrumental in being able to inspire that person, and there's different events like that. I was in Ecuador a few years ago, and there was a guy that he has one arm, so he had lost his arm in a motorcycle, and he wanted to do the test, and the test level 1 IKFF, it's quite difficult, and so I was like, this guy wants to do the test, and he was able to clear it with one arm, and it was just amazingly inspiring. And that was just a reminder, like, man, like, if you have the desire, if you have the willpower, you can overcome any difficulty. And, and that was just a great reminder for me of, like, why I do what I do, and it not that alone, but different things like that, just, very humbling to realize that I have the platform to be able to be a positive influence, and
sure.
We can each do our own thing in our own way to, as we say, to make the world a better place. We can inspire one person, and that person can maybe inspire 100 people, and that's how we create a strong society, a strong nation, strong community. It's working.
You don't have a gym, right? Like
no,
your own,
I've never had a gym. I've always kind of gone to other people's facilities and kind of brought the show on the road in that sense.
Have you ever thought about having your own gym?
I have thought about it, but really as far as goals, I turned 50 this year, but I keep myself
your forms when you walked in.
I keep myself
Robert was
healthy.
Like,
and actually what my objective is I want to, and there's no exact timeline. It's as long as it takes.
Yeah.
But I'm committed to get my black belt in jiu-jitsu. And at that point,
what belt are you now?
I'm blue. I've been training 2 years under Salo and Shanji Ribeiro, and so it's a long-term path, and obviously it starts at black belt, it doesn't end at black belt, but that's obviously a significant.
That's amazing,
and at this point my focus is, okay, when I'm ready, I'm going to go to purple, and then from there it's like, so I'm not skipping any steps because you can't,
right?
And I'm in it for the long haul, but in terms of if I want to open my place, what I really want to do is when I'm qualified and when I earn that level, I want to open my own school. And, at that point, because I'm a martial artist first and foremost,
right.
And, I love the Kung Fu. The Kung Fu really gave me my foundation in movement. It taught me about grace and fluidity and flexibility. But from a practical, mano a mano point of view, the jiu-jitsu is a super efficient and, you know, I don't like to
works.
make comparison because it comes down to the man. It doesn't come down to the art. But a lot of what I feel I learned in Kung Fu, it was like 50% practical and 50% fantastical. Like it's great in the movies, but
I think too,
it hasn't adapted to the modern times so effectively the way that jiu-jitsu is like, you know, especially with Salo, it's like 100% of what I'm learning has been battle tested at the highest level. So I don't even have to question, does this work or not? And I never had that confidence in Kung Fu. I was always like, okay, yeah, I can pull it off of these students, but can I really use this in a real fight? You know what I mean? And it's like now there's no question that whatever your level is, what you're learning, it's real stuff. And I just love that, and I love the philosophy. And, you know, so that's kind of my midterm goal over the next several years. I want to get to a level where I'm qualified to teach.
To the preach it to the choir.
Yeah, exactly. And then now integrate my body of knowledge, the movement, the breathing, the movement, the meditation, the martial art. And, you know, there's elements of Kung Fu that I still use. It's really informed my mobility, my flexibility, my meditation, you know, but I guess I'm eclectic in the sense that I just care about improvement and what works. I'm not married to any one system or one style. If someone comes along and can show me something that I'm missing, I'm happy to embrace that and learn from that, you know, and that's for me, I think that's one of my assets is that I'm not rigid to where, oh yeah, you know, I have this much, this is my resume, this is my experience, and so there's nothing you can teach me. And I think when you have that mentality, you start to die. You know, and so I always see myself as a student, you know, and yes, I'm a teacher to a lot of people, but it's because I'm a student.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so that's kind of my goal. And
black belt with the white belt state of mind, right?
Yeah,
and nobody can mess with you.
Yeah, and it's like
you're always strong. You're always, because we need that challenge. We need to be growing. We need to be learning new things constantly for us to be healthy and be our best, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've learned so much through the jiu-jitsu lineage, you know, and you know, we have the 6 blades, but that's just an interpretation of, you know, the Bushido, really. And it's the code, you know, and things like respect and family and discipline and loyalty and honor, you know, and dedication. These are guiding principles for life. They're also guiding principles in the martial arts, is because it's, you know, and it took me coming back to the martial arts to really appreciate a lot of these things, because for so long, you know, just because of the way my life started and how I grew, I was always kind of going solo. And I always kind of had an idea or a pride, oh, I can do it on my own.
Exactly.
And I realized that you don't have access to the greater power. You need to form units, and you need to have collaborations, because we all have strengths and weaknesses. And, you know,
be a part of a team.
Yeah, you know, and having that understanding, that's really changed my outlook, and even how everything that I do, you know, and refocused on the importance of family and, you know, friendships and camaraderie. And it's like, you have your strength, I have my strength. We have some of the same ones, but we have different ones. And when we can have that trust, and you know, jiu-jitsu, it's all about trust, because this guy's your brother, but he's trying to choke you.
Right.
And you trust that he's not going to kill you. And he trusts that you're not going to break his arm when you have the chance to do it. And without that trust, there's no progress, you know. And so that's just, again, the martial spirit is so instrumental in my entire life philosophy, and the person that I focus on growing into and being.
Yeah, when I think about Kung Fu, right, of course you're a part of a school and all that, but it's very solo, right? It's very solo, right? But
yes.
Jiu-Jitsu, it's all contact, right?
Yes.
It's like straight up opposite of social distancing, right? It's
right.
the exact opposite, you know, like you're up in there, you know, you're you know, it's touch and all that. And I think that changes things, you know?
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
connection and the trust, right? You're saying the trust, and it really connects you to something bigger than yourself. And that's the power, you know? That's the power. And it's hard to do that with, not to compare any of the other martial arts, because there's benefits, right, and everything, and the striking and all that. I think you should know everything, right? But with jiu-jitsu, like there's no way. You have to accept, you have to surrender kind of to that process, you know, and you surrender to the greater power, right, of that, you know, something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
You know Ricardo Laborio?
By name, I don't know.
He was like the founder of American Top Team and the Brazilian Top Team.
He's a legendary guy as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were just talking about that. You know, it's just much bigger, right? And we realize it's much bigger than just us. You know, and I think that's where greatness lies, right? In surrendering to that. You know,
I really love the Brazilian take and the perspective on the martial arts, because for me it's a incredible balance between, you know, one hand the tradition, but on the other hand, there's like this relaxed kind of...
You know, for me as a young man, you know, moving down to Brazil as a teenager, right? Like, just talking about human connection, just you add that Brazilian culture to that, you know, to that connection, and that it's like, it's the perfect storm, you know? Like if you're a, you know, Northern European or wherever, some place a little bit more socially distancing, you know,
a stiff upper lip.
yeah, you know, I don't think it would be the same as like a Brazilian culture,
right,
combined with, you know, jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the culture has a lot to do, and even the climate and the, you know, demographics of it. People
being warmer and more friendly, and for me at least, you know, when I was younger, I remember just that combination really changed my life. You know, really opened me up, you know, to like the group as well, you know, and I think it really, I mean, all the success I can attest in my life is because of those years, you know, of living in Brazil and really surrendering to the team and knowing that, you know, your greatness lies because you're a part of a team.
Yes, and it's, yeah, I mean, and there's cultural differences, and obviously, like today, the world is so much more integrated to where the differences in culture are not as extreme as they were, you know, even a couple of decades ago. But in terms of the martial arts and the tradition and where they grow from, is like the Chinese traditionally are very secretive. And it's like, you know, the last kata, like the teacher doesn't teach everything because it comes out of that caste system where, you know, the peasant is always going to be a peasant, and the king's always going to be a king. But if you're a good martial artist, you have a chance to maybe work for the emperor, where now you can be a palace boxing guard, so you make a better life. So it's like, I'm not going to teach this guy everything because I don't want him to defeat me and take my position. So it's like I'm holding back, and there's that secretive element, you know, whereas that doesn't exist so much in the Brazilian approach to the martial art, at least from my experience.
Yeah, I mean, like back in the day it was different, right? You know, back in the day before the internet and YouTubes and all that, you know, it was definitely more secretive.
Okay.
Yeah, like in the 90s and stuff. You know, like, you know, I would have to go to the tournaments, and I would have to be with my big VHS tape, like recording. I'd have to find the guy with the VHS recordings, you know, of matches, and you'd have to really, you know, get the secrets from the guy, you know. But now you have, you know, before it even happens in the tournament, inside the gym, right? They have trainings, you know, available for you to watch, right?
Yeah.
So stuff is definitely, it's changed a lot, you know, and I think it's good, right?
Yeah,
it's good because you're sharing the knowledge, you know, and I mean, at the end of the day, it's like it's the connections, right? It's the connections, and like we were saying, like the surrendering to the group and to the team, you know, it was really, you know, it makes you understand like you're part of something bigger. And that makes you better because of that.
Yeah.
And you have to be humble, right? You have to, like, you know, sure, you can tap people out, but, you know, eventually you're going to get tapped out too. And you have to be okay with that. Yeah. And because of that, that makes you better too.
I was, you know, my thing is like you swim with sharks, you become a shark. And I don't want to be a big fish in a small pond. You know, I'd rather be a small fish in the ocean. And, you know, I'm happy to be the last guy if all the guys I'm training with are killers, you know, because then I'm going to become like that versus, okay, I'm in some small town and there's nobody. And it's like, okay, you can beat up on the little kids, but that's not a true.
Yeah. Have you read the book Tribe?
No, I haven't. I saw it. Who's the author?
It was Junger. I just mess up his name, you know, but he had the Tribe book.
Okay.
And that, you know, it took, you know, he got into it because he started writing about PTSD, like some Vietnam soldiers. And he went down this whole like rabbit hole, And really made me, because my dad, who went to Vietnam, and so I have some experience with that from that perspective, you know.
Yes.
And it made me just really understand what I do in the jiu-jitsu gym, you know.
Wow.
And you know, just what we, you know, because we live in a city with millions of people.
Yep.
But we're not connected, right, to anybody. But with jiu-jitsu, and you know, and because I found TACFit, and you know, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, like maybe 2012.
Oh wow!
And I had all these like neurological things, like a lot of people don't know. Like I talk about it now, you know.
My mother died of ALS, which is a
neurological
thing.
The bottom line is I had a hard time walking, even talking.
Oh wow!
You know, a lot of things, you know, and I could still compete, you know, but the rest of the day I was wrecked, you know.
Because I guess the jiu-jitsu is just muscle memory for you, so
it's just to get me so excited, and you know, your will to win is just, you know, just overpowers everything. Your nervous system is just amazing. Our minds are amazing, right? And it shows you like the capability of our minds, right?
Yeah.
But with doing the right things, like, you know, the breath, with the movement, the structure, like, and just listening to Scott's things and Scott's teachings, really, it really transformed me, you know, and brought me back.
That's amazing.
You know, I haven't gotten another brain MRI, but I know how I feel and how I'm functioning. And so that's why I'm like, it's given me so much, you know, and yeah, not to go on that whole way, but
that's important. That's incredible.
But maybe understand, and so I get the same thing. What I love about jiu-jitsu, right, that connection, I get the same thing, you know, with the TACFit and all that, but also like, you know, the right. That's why I wanted to reach out to you, because I felt that same kind of understanding. It's like a deeper understanding.
Yeah.
Of like the martial arts and the mindset, you know, the martial art mindset. Like going into your training, right? Into your training.
Absolutely.
Into your, you know, let's say it's like a kata, but, you know, in a way it is, right? Because you're training with yourself.
There's that integration, you know, and like the cliche is mind, body, and spirit. We hear that, you know, but that's such an elusive, and what I teach is mind, body, and breath, because it's like mind, we know what that is. It's your awareness, it's your consciousness. The body, that's the obvious. We can touch it and see it and feel it. But the spirit is like, it means different things to different people. What is it? Is it God? Is it, you know?
Right.
So the breath, that's something that we understand. And so now with the mind, body, and breath, the breath is the conduit that connects the mind with the body. And it's via the breath that we're able to integrate our movements and our consciousness, and that's the flow.
Right.
And that's the martial art, that's the jiu-jitsu, that's the kettlebell, the way that I'm doing with the kettlebell, it's that flow. Like
our autonomic nervous system, right? Our organs are functioning by themselves, but the one thing we can control is that breath.
Yes. And that's the salvation. And, you know, and a lot of people are not tied into their breathing. And, you know, when they get stressed, they get nervous, you know, they get scared, they stop the breathing, and then the body can't function, you know. And it's like now we have a lot, in this era, we have a lot more awareness about martial art and what works and what doesn't, but that's mostly because of kind of the influence of MMA and jiu-jitsu. But, you know, you go back 20 years, you know, these karate and kung fu schools, like the guy's a black belt, and he's, you know, whipping everyone in the school, and then he gets in a street fight and he gets his ass kicked because of like freeze, you know, and your skills, like when you freeze, your skills, you can't use them. Your body just locks up. And that's, you know, that's where the breathing is like, we learn to slow it down and just stay calm. And then, as you said, our autonomic nervous system can the muscle memory just comes out from there.
How did you meet Scott?
Yeah, so the first meeting of Scott Sonnen, we actually were invited as VIP guests, a guy named Fairfax Hackley. This is back in Columbus, Ohio.
That's a name, huh? Fairfax.
Yeah,
Hackley.
The hack, the hack attack. And Hackley's an amazing guy. He actually has been the MC for the Arnold Classic since the very beginning, because Arnold, they're not anymore, but at that time, Arnold has business partners, a guy named Jim Lornemer. And they started originally the Arnold was just a famous bodybuilding show. And then it grew into this sports festival where they have
martial arts and
every
because I went there
sport.
2003, 2004.
Yeah, they have the jiu-jitsu there. They have Olympic weightlifting, powerlifting. They have kettlebell lifting, gymnastics, rhythmic gymnastics. I mean, every sport you can imagine. There's more than 100,000 100,000 athletes that
Yeah, I remember
not
that.
this year, but
Right.
you know, normal times. So Hack's kind of the MC that's been running that since the early days. And, you know, Hack had brought myself there to do some kettlebell training, and he brought Scott there to do some club bell or tack fit training. And so we were both guests there was a UFC fight there, and it was like, I think 2004, and Randy Couture was the headline. He was fighting for the heavyweight title. I'm trying to remember who he was fighting, but he won the heavyweight title at that
Tim
fight.
Sylvia?
I think it was Sylvia.
Yeah.
That's right. Yep. It was Sim Sylvia, and it was in Columbus, Ohio. So
Because he fought for the heavyweight title, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. He had been light heavy, and he moved up to heavy at that point. And so we Hack gave us some ringside tickets, and so Scott and I were sitting next to each other there, and that's when we first met and started talking. But I had known of Scott prior to that, you know, just from basically the internet. And I know at one time him and Pablo were somehow a little bit, maybe not formally associated, but you know, they were kind of both pioneers.
Like I don't know, but they mentioned each other in their books.
Yeah.
You know, like Scott mentions Pablo in his Club Bell book, and was it Power to the People? One of the original ones. Like
that's right. Yeah, and that was even
Pablo mentioned Scott in
before
his book.
the kettlebell.
Right,
that was his Power to the People. It was like barbell with deadlift and one arm, one arm side press, I think. And so I had seen his name a lot around that time prior to meeting him, and even like it was before Z Health. It was called Zadoriev, and he was involved also in that. And I remember reading about that. Yeah, so we didn't actually meet until that UFC fight. And then subsequently to that, we had a couple interactions where I know some of his tack fit guys had been guys that had trained with me in IKFF and, you know, down in South America and Chile and Mexico and some other places. So he had reached out to me and said, hell yeah, you got some great guys down here in Chile. And
it's a small world, right? When you get down to it,
right? And then Scott had done some work going back, I think like 2006, 2007 for a while. He was an advisor for Valery Fedorenko, who was he was actually the first former Russian world champion that had come to the U.S. Teaching kettlebells, and he had an organization called AKC, American Kettlebell Club, and at that time
I've seen that banner in the old tack videos.
And then it became World Kettlebell Club, WKC.
Oh, okay.
You know, subsequently to that, but when it started, it was AKC, and he had brought in Scott as his advisor, like tactical advisor, and you know, and Scott had done like a kettlebell fundamentals program or something at that time, going back like 13, 14 years ago. So yeah, kind of just a lot of overlap between what he was doing and what I was doing. But I think we only actually met in person that one time, and then talked on the phone a couple times. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's funny how things like it happens like years in the past, but you revisit it another time. You're intertwined. You start getting intertwined after a chance meeting, right?
Exactly. And, you know, he's a pioneer. You know, I'm a pioneer in what I'm doing. Right. He was before me, you know, several years before me, you know, with what he's doing. And, you know, we're both still active and still doing it.
You're a beast, man. You're like the youngest. You're 50 years old?
Yeah, I'm 50, yeah.
50, amazing. Yeah. And him too. But Scott's such a beast, you know?
Yeah. And it's just the well-being, you know, and not stopping is a huge part of it. Because when people stop, they get old fast, and you know, because there's that saying, "old man strength," that people talk about, and it's true. Like, we don't really lose strength, but what we lose is that spring, and I think it's more to do with the bones. You know, it's like Michael Jordan can't jump as high anymore as he could, you know, and it's like, you know, I'm not going to run my jumping pistol squat. I'm not doing it 36 inches now. I can maybe do 30 inches, you know, in a box for 1 or 2 reps, where before I was doing like 36-inch box, you know, for 7-8 reps at a time. And, you know, so we lose a little bit of the spring, but we don't lose the strength. And I always feel that what we lose in kind of physical vitality, we can more than make up for in awareness and in being more well-rounded, being smarter, being more economical, in you know, not being, because younger people tend to use a lot of energy and burning around, and maybe the mind isn't so focused, you know, and then we start realizing, man, I gotta be smart with how I use my energy, because it's like you know, I don't spring out of bed as easily as I did when I was in my 20s and 30s. So, but I think the main thing is just not stopping.
Yeah, that's it.
You know, because when guys stop, then it's like they try to start, and it's very, very hard to. But if you don't stop, you may have to change it. You know, I'm not lifting the heavy kettlebells as much anymore, but I still can do everything. And, you know, maybe I have to warm up a little bit more, but, you know, can still do everything. And I intend to continue. And, you know, the universe sometimes has other plans. We think it's going to be one way and something else, but we definitely have a lot of input in the way that we age and the quality of life as we get older.
Joey Alvarado.
Yeah.
You've known him.
Amazing guy. Yeah, Joey.
He was the first guy to do like movement with kettlebells, right?
He was definitely, Joey is a pioneer in the sense that he had the insight to take the jiu-jitsu and the concepts of the jiu-jitsu and move it, you know, so his kettle jitsu that he started more than a decade ago, I don't remember. And, you know, Joey and I actually, we haven't met in person, but it's like we've known each other for a long time. He's reached out to me a lot of times, and, you know, he had expressed to me on multiple occasions that, you know, that he had learned a lot, you know, from my videos and DVDs. And one of the things I've always really respected about Joey, and I know he's also one of your black belts, in fact, in the jiu-jitsu, which...
He got his black belt, like, from Haj Machado, but, we've been connected. He represented the team, like, before he was a black belt.
Okay.
So we've known each other. He's helped train some of my fighters, you know, in the past. He's just a big-hearted guy.
Yeah, he is.
And so I've been, like, his coach, too, like, for, you know, all these years. So, I mean, he is pretty much, right?
Yeah,
now, at this point,
Yeah, and... You know, I see. So just that in and of itself is a great accomplishment. Yeah. But the fact that what I really respected about Joey, you know, for a long time is that he kind of made his own path. He didn't have to go under like, oh, I'm going to be one of Pavel's guys, or I'm going to be, you know, another. You know, he kind of saw the opportunity and created his own twist. Mm-hmm. And did it his own way, where it's like, okay, these guys they're trying to lift the heaviest kettlebells they can for 5 reps, and these guys over here, they're trying to do, you know, 200 reps, and those are great ways to do it. But he was looking at the mobility and the flow like we do in jiu-jitsu, and maybe we're going to use light kettlebells, but we're going to make the jiu-jitsu movements more intense with the kettlebell. It
always tells me, you know, it's just makes it more fun, right, more dynamic, and it keeps people interested.
Yeah, it's an art form.
It's an art form, yeah.
Yeah, and it does, because it's like, you know, there's martial artists, they love to, you know, say train the jiu-jitsu, but maybe they're not doing any cross-training, and they could use some more conditioning, and now you add a little kettlebell to that, and it's perfectly complementary. And then on the other hand, you have the fitness people that maybe they don't want to do martial arts because maybe they're a little afraid, but then they start seeing elements of it with the kettle jitsu, and now maybe they start becoming jiu-jitsu students too. So it kind of brings the two
it's good
complementary worlds, you know, and that's what I'm, you know, that's what I'm doing with the Hibero jiu-jitsu with Sensei Salo and Shanji is like, you know, integrating the kettlebell. And now we can be more complete martial artists. That's it. You know, because we can't just do one thing. We're going to be really strong, but there's going to be a lot of holes in the game, and, you know, and it's like nothing against if you like powerlifting, you like bodybuilding, that's all good too. But I would say that, you know, especially for jiu-jitsu and martial arts in general, the kettlebell is so complementary, you know, like the club, because the club is handheld, you're working your grip. And if you're not working your grip, you could say that your strength is not really transferable in the real world. Because, like, if you got, like, strong biceps but you don't have a strong grip, that's not going to help you, you know. And so that's something where the kettlebell and the clubs are very compatible in that they're training the grip while you're training all the muscular patterns as well. And, you know, for
when
me,
you say grip, right? It's like it's not over gripping, it's not under gripping. It's getting that intelligence and that connection with your gripping, right?
That proprioceptive and you know, the fingers more so than just the form, because you can have a strong form, but it's, you know, and again, we're not trying to like crush it like you would with a heavy bar. You have that kind of sensitivity where you can clamp it when you need to, but you have that endurance where you can hold on to it. And that's something where this kettlebell specializes. And then there's other things where it's like kettlebell teach you keep your elbow in. You don't let that elbow float out.
Transfer,
and it's the same.
Yeah.
It's just, that's something that, as you mentioned earlier, it's like Shanji. I've known Shanji for 15 years. He trained with me, at my house, like at least 15 years ago, 2006, I think it was. And, we've been friends ever since, but all those years I was never doing jiu-jitsu. I was teaching him, and it was kind of like he was traveling, doing seminars. I'm traveling. So like 4 or 5 times a year, he'd text me and say, "Hey coach, you in town?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Yeah, I want to work out." And he's always been a VIP. So it was like, I would always make time for Shanji. So I'd be going, train him. And then, about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, I was, training them at the U down in San Diego.
The University of Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah. And, I was just teaching him a kettlebell workout. And then Salo walks in. That's the first time I ever met Salo. He's like, "Hey," and he's like, "Hey, so great to meet you, this and that. My brother loves you." And he's like, "Why aren't you training jiu-jitsu?" And I'm like, "I don't know." He hands me a gi.
The way he said it, right?
Yeah, and it's like his force of personality. It's like, how can I not train jiu-jitsu in Saulo Ribeiro? You know what I mean? It's like, and like all those years, it's like Shanji, I knew him, I knew his accomplishments, but for whatever reason, it's, because Shanji, I think his personality and my personality are more similar. Like Shanji's like real low-key guy, super, super nice guy, and like Saulo's super intense and like, and they're both amazing but different, and it's like, Salo's force of personality is what kind of got me. And then, from there, after about a year, I brought my son into it. And that's what really made me more dedicated, because it was like
17, you said?
Yeah, he just turned 17. He got his his blue belt from Salo, which, for me is a really, really good accomplishment at that age, because you guys don't give out belts easily, and especially to a young guy like that. He's very talented, and he's got a lot of potential in the art. And but for me, on a personal level, the bond was incredible. And it was like, before he was training, it'd be like, "Oh, I'm busy, I'll skip class, maybe I'll go tomorrow," that kind of thing. It wasn't, but then when I brought him, it's like, look, at his age, he's got to train every day. Because if you're going to be good at something, it's got to be a part of your life. It's not something you do on occasion. It's something you do every day. And it's like, my responsibility is to make sure that he gets to class. And so now I bring him to class. Now I'm going to class. And that got
family
me where,
affair.
Yeah, so now it's
That's
like
beautiful.
I'm training 6 days a week. And
he's 17, and you have two more. You have two.
Yeah, so I have 2 daughters.
2 daughters. Okay.
Yeah, my oldest daughter just turned 22 last month. My youngest daughter turned 19 today, and then my son turned 17 a couple months ago. Yeah, so I got 2 girls and a boy, and yeah, they're wonderful, and they're doing great in life. And yeah,
nice.
So we're actually taking I'm bringing the 3 of them. We're gonna take a trip up to Alaska. We're flying out tomorrow night.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we're gonna take 4 days out there. Never been there, so
I'd love to go up there. My wife doesn't want to go up to the cold. To Alaska, but it's something that it's on my bucket list for sure.
You can maybe compromise.
I mean, for me, like for her, I guess, yeah. But I just want to go.
Yeah, I want to go to. Never been there.
I wouldn't mind even being in the cold,
Yeah,
to really feel it.
I love it. And I guess we should be able to catch some northern lights if we stay up. If we're willing to stay up past 1 in the morning, we should be able to catch that Aurelia Borealis. And so that's an interesting place. I like the cold as well. I'm friends with Wim Hof. Not real close. I mean, I know him. I'm more friends with his son, but I met Wim Hof about 2 years ago, and I went through his
training.
Yeah, his training. He's a remarkable guy.
Amazing, huh?
Yeah, what he's done with the cold is, and I've integrated that as well into my life, and it's done a lot of good for me. The deep breathing, which no one invented that. That's as old as man. It comes way from the yoga traditions. But what he's done with combining that and bringing it with the cold, and then just kind of making it
the science, right? Kind of like that kind of gets people to buy in. Like,
That's
it's
right.
science now.
He's
it's real.
the first guy that they really started doing research on,
and then he proved it by his example.
That's right.
Like, what is he doing that he's able to not get frostbite and die? Right?
Because I mean, he was doing that since he was a young guy, and I know I have a friend from Holland. He's like, oh yeah, I remember 10 years ago, like That's just the crazy guy that jumps in the cold water.
Yeah.
Nobody knew about it. And then all of a sudden, you know, maybe in the last 5 years or so, all of a sudden he became this like global phenomenon where all these famous people are talking about him, and now he's like a, you know, global icon. But it's not an overnight thing. He's been doing it forever. But when they did the studies, you know, the first one, I don't know if it was at Harvard or maybe Wayne State, one of the universities. The first one, they did it, and he showed all these favorable results for immunity, but they're like, oh, you're just a freak of nature. And he's like, no, anyone can do it. And then Harvard did the commission study where they had like the two groups of, I think, 10, and they injected them with the Ebola virus. Low dosages, not enough to kill you, but make you sick. And the ones that weren't doing the Wim Hof, they all got sick. They all had symptoms of, you know, cough and phlegm and headache and, you know, fever. And the ones that were doing the Wim Hof, all of them over, you know, and that's when the science starts saying, okay, wait a minute, this stuff really works. And when he does this presentation, he shows like these videos, and he shows like the library of a university with these thousands of books. And he's like, oh yeah, the doctors say, the scientists are like, you see these books? It's like, because of you, we got to rewrite all of them.
Because of you.
Yeah,
that's how it is, though, right? I mean, the top scientists, right? They always say, like, we think, but we don't know.
Yeah.
Right, because you have to be humble.
Well, the humble scientists will, the honest ones.
The honest ones, right?
Yeah,
the
not
honest
the ones that are kind of paid by some lobby group to show, and, you know, academic.
To get some.
Yeah, and you have a lot of that in the biomechanics,
interest.
in the physical education. You have a lot of guys, they're tenured. And, you know, when you get tenured, that's a job you want to hold on to, and you're not very open-minded to things that change the game. And, you know, there's a lot of things that are being taught in the physical education that really are outdated and archaic. And, you know, but the scientists like, no, the science says, and they're very rigid. But then you have guys like my friend David Weck, who's the guy that he invented the Bosu, which is a famous product all over. But he's a brilliant biomechanist, and he's evolved running the way we run, the mechanics, and understands things, you know, and the top scientist, you know, and the, you know, top scientist guy at SMU that is probably considered the premier, you know, performance institute, you know, he's like, oh, no, this, you know, no, you got to brace your core and swing your arms. But
we're all different, right? How can you be, you know, so strict on everything? Or we're all different. We have different nervous systems. There's so many factors, so many different factors, right? That go into being human, being alive, right?
Yeah.
So it's, you know, you have to.
Well, it's the science is like true science, yes, but you know, the word science is thrown around a lot as kind of a intellectual laziness, as a way to shut people up. It's like, I don't want to argue with you, so I'm just, the science says, and it's like, that's the end of the conversation.
Right, you know, like right, the new nervous system things, brain things, neuroscience, right, and fascia things that we didn't have the imaging technology on, like 5 years ago, 6 years ago. I mean, it's changed everything, right?
Yeah.
Like we see things that we didn't see before. That's right. So if you were a doctor before, or not, I mean, if you're not up to date, right? Like it's a different thing, right?
And without the,
oh, I'm a doctor, I'm a this. Well, ask them questions, right? And see how they respond. See how what they say.
Yes, we have to keep a little bit of, the cup can't be completely full.
So like we talk about the you're saying like the people that have been around for it, it's been thousands of years old, like the acupuncturists and these things, right, from Eastern medicine, right? That worked. There's a reason why it worked, right?
But the science doesn't verify it. So okay, but
it works.
Hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people, you know, report favorable results, and that doesn't carry, you know. And so now we have, you know, they call it integrated medicine, right? And it didn't really start changing until finally, like, alternative medicine started actually outpaced in terms of profit. More people were paying for alternative medicine than for conventional medicine. So then the Western medicine model has to look at that and say, oh, well, we better get involved with this. And so now they have integrated medicine, where you have certain physicians that are open-minded about acupuncture and Ayurveda, and they're, you know, guys like maybe Deepak Chopra, people that have kind of tried to bridge that gap of, you know, East meets West.
Joe Dispenza, right?
Yeah,
like,
Joe Dispenza is amazing.
He's amazing because he talks about the science. So he gets the buy-in on the science, right?
Yes, he's an amazing guy. Exactly. And just that open, we can learn from tradition. We can progress and respect those who came before us simultaneously. It doesn't need to be an either or type of thing.
Right. What's your favorite teaching moment of your career? You've been teaching since your Kung Fu days to your kettlebells. What's your favorite teaching moment?
There's three that probably jump out at me. Two related to there's probably more than three, but some from the martial arts, some from the kettlebell. But one was definitely my friend that has the one arm, friend Victor down in Ecuador. That very inspiring that he was able to get through that. And just, man, you guys are crying. You got two arms and two legs, and this guy's got one arm. He's not making any excuses.
Power of the human spirit.
Yeah, so that was really incredible. Just in the last 2 weeks, there was a woman, interestingly enough, also from Ecuador. We did on Zoom, but she's 9 months pregnant. She just had her baby, and she did her recertification because she trained in that when I was in Ecuador 2 years ago, and her level 1 IKFF was expired, so she wanted to recertify. 9 months pregnant, baby due any day, and she did the test. She wanted to, and I changed it a little because normally the women do it with a 12 kilograms, like 26 pounds, but for her, I didn't want her doing too heavy because of the pregnancy, so I changed it to make it an 8 kilo, but she had to do way more reps. She had to do like 160 swings and had to do like 120 snatches and 50 squats and how many? I think 50 clean and press. And so it was a 23-minute from start to finish, 23 minutes without putting the bell down, without stopping. And that's just amazing that she was able to maintain that focus, being
9 months
with a big belly like out to here. So that to me is like super inspiring, for everybody, obviously for women and for pregnant women. Like, you don't need to just kick your feet up and stay at home. You can actually live your life and do stuff and stay strong. And, so that was an amazing one. Recently, I actually certified my sensei, Alberto, in kettlebell. So he did his level 1, and that was awesome because he only had 1 month of training, and usually it's like a 3-month training. But he just, that willpower, and I was really proud of that, and then the other one is like when I go back to like my Kung Fu teaching days. This was it was probably about 10 years ago, but I was at a Blockbuster, and before Blockbuster was still a thing, right? And this lady came in, and basically I had taught her son. Probably going back to I was teaching her son probably like 86, between like 1986 and 1990, so 30 years ago. And when I was teaching her son, he started with me when he was like 6 years old and probably trained with me till he was 9 or 10. And she came to me and was like, you know what? I remember. She's like, you changed my son's life. We'll always remember what you did, and you were such an important role model for him, and helped him to develop that discipline and that confidence. For me, that's a beautiful moment as a teacher, where you find out that many years later there was someone, especially with a young person, where you're able to impact them in a positive way, and as a result they become a better human, and that's the most rewarding thing, really. So all those things in different ways, or inspiration, and also like reinforcement that, and I'm on the right path. I'm doing something that is of value, to humanity, and that's a wonderful feeling, because I can go to sleep and feel good about myself. I'm not stealing. I'm not just trying to make money and rip people off. I'm actually giving value that pays many times more in dividends. And that's just a really nice feeling for me.
Worst moment,
man, really is when the having to fly overseas, like to Australia, which I'm looking at like probably a 36-hour trip, 16 and a half hours nonstop from LA to Sydney. And it's like right as I'm about to walk out the door, you know, my wife at the time, you know, we have this massive fight, this massive blow up, and I don't even remember what it was about, but she's super angry, and it's like, you know, you're horrible, I don't ever want to see you again. I'm like, I have to go to Australia, you know, and it's
right
just,
when you were going to go to the airport.
Exactly, you know, and then I'm like flying,
thinking about it.
Yeah, just, man, this is, you know, and just,
what am I doing?
Yeah, you know, and I need to be there with her and, you know, fix this and resolve this, but, you know, I have a responsibility, you know, and that would probably be, and it's not fair to the students to give you anything but your best, but you're so distracted and, you know, so just, you know, sad, but that's life. You know, we have to, it's just an example of we have to face difficulties, and we have to stay calm under pressure, and we have to figure out a way to deal with it and overcome and not buckle, you know. So that was a very difficult, and that's just one example. These types of things happen a lot, you know, over the years.
I mean, it's a huge commitment, right, to dedicate yourself to the craft.
Yeah, and so it's just, you know, where the professional and the personal sort of integrated in a way that wasn't a positive thing, and you kind of have to have your game face on, even while, you know, internally your life is like, feels like it's falling apart. Those have been obviously the most difficult. Yeah, but in terms of the teaching and in terms of the interaction, I really can't say I've had too many bad experiences, you know, because it's just something that is really important to me, you know, but there were bad experiences around that where I didn't feel focused and being able to give my 100% all to those students that were there for me, you know. But that's life. We have bad days, and we still have to keep going.
Yeah, that's it. That's part of being a professional, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you for inspiring a lot of people around the world. Thank you for, you know, your dedication to the craft. I mean, it's super inspiring for me to. I know I can't imagine how hard it is.
Thank you,
for the amount of traveling and just dedication, right? And giving, right? And a lot of times you don't see any returns, right? But as a teacher myself, but then, you know, traveling internationally like you have, you know, it's definitely changes things, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big,
adds another level of commitment.
It is, you know, and for me, it is also a great reward and a great blessing, you know, as well. And so I always look more about the blessing of it more so than the sacrifice of it. For sure. Yeah, they go together.
Well, thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank you.
How can people find more about your federation and about you?
Yeah, so the best way, right now my website's being reconstructed. So my website is IKFF.com.
Okay.
The best way to reach out to me is actually over Instagram. So my Instagram is Steve Cotter IKFF, and you can just shoot me a DM. And then they can also check out my YouTube channel, and that's IKFF channel. And I have a couple hundred, you know, videos of mobility and kettlebells and body weight stuff, and a lot of stuff there. So love to hear from you guys anytime.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, brother. Thank you very much.